Okay, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions before I have to take Milan to preschool. Most of you said you wanted me to talk through the answers, but I think I'm just going to write text on them for those that can't listen. Okay, the first question is, what am I most nervous about for having 3 kids? Surprisingly, I'm not nervous about a lot of things. I was way more nervous for 2 than I am for 3, but I am nervous about being outnumbered. I feel like that's what everyone mentions when they mention going from 2 to 3, is that now you and your husband are completely outnumbered, so you can't just tackle 1 kid each. There's an extra. But I was really nervous to go to 2 because they were really close in age. Milan was a really needy baby and a really hard toddler, and Michael traveled a ton, and Phoebe is way more laid back. Michael's job is laid back, so I'm not as nervous. And then the next question was, how is it having 2 kids and a puppy? Really hard. Really hard. But I'm probably not the best person to ask for advice because I'm still learning every day and we're doing something every day. I think our biggest challenge with him is he listens really well to me and Michael, but anytime we have guests over or he stays with somebody else or our babysitter comes, he turns into a completely different dog and really misbehaves. But he actually does really well with our kids and has always done really well, and we never had a huge problem with him chewing on anything or with potty training or anything. But when other kids come over, he gets really, really excited and doesn't know how to handle himself and jump. So that's our biggest struggle with him. But I'm really glad we got him when the kids were really young and when he was really young, because they've kind of grown up together and they don't know anything else. They're not afraid of him. They all just play together. But we did get him when we lived on almost an acre of land. And when we moved here, we thought that we would get a fenced-in backyard, and we don't have a fenced-in backyard. So that has been really rough because when people do come over, we don't really have any place to put him. Next question was, how is it with Milan and Phoebe sharing a room? And any advice that I have. My main advice is to keep the same schedule and really loud white noise. I have been wanting to put them in the same room for quite a while. I always told myself that I would do it when Phoebe was consistently sleeping through the night, but she's always slept through the night, so then I told myself I would do it when she was 1, and then it was right around the move, so then I just did it when we only had 1 night of Milan being kind of confused and her being upset that Phoebe was in her room, and she kept saying that Phoebe needed to go to her room, but we made a big deal about how they get to share now. Really, we just tried to make the whole thing really fun and positive, and they didn't wake each other up at night, and Milan would wake up early in the morning and would sneak out of the room and wouldn't wake Phoebe up, so that was awesome. She just did that. Really, it went way, way smoother than I thought it would be. She did, and I wish I did it sooner because it would have been nice to have a guest bedroom, but I had just imagined the worst in my head, and it really wasn't bad. On another note, when we switched Phoebe to her big girl bed, it got a lot harder because Phoebe has never really just gone right to bed as soon as we put her down. She always has played in her crib, so when we switched to a top, she just wanted to play in her room, and which was fine. She wasn't crying or anything. She just was walking around and kind of messing around, but anytime that she was ready for bed, she got back in bed and fell asleep. But during the time where she was playing around, she was bothering me. And Milan didn't like that and actually slept through almost everything. It was hilarious to watch. Phoebe would be like pulling her hair and kicking her face, and she'd be sleeping through most of it. Phoebe had to be on her for a long time. She did. So we just put Phoebe back in her crib, which isn't a huge deal. She's still really young to be in a toddler bed, but we just decided to try it. Milan switched this early and was fine, but she was also in her own room. And Phoebe would have done just fine if she was in her own room. But with them, did I have any symptoms before missing my period that indicated I was pregnant with any of my 3 pregnancies? Yes with Milan, no with Phoebe, and no with this baby. With Milan, I didn't test until I was like 7 weeks pregnant. We were trying, but I wasn't super in tune with my body to know what to watch out for, but I like randomly puked in the shower so I had symptoms before I took the test. And I was about like a week late on my period, maybe 2. I don't know. I didn't really track much back then. So the puking in the shower is what made me test. And then with Phoebe's pregnancy, I had a miscarriage the month before. So my body was all funky anyways. So all the weird things that was happening, I just attributed it to my miscarriage. And they told me I might not even have a period the next month. So when I was late, I tried to just kind of brush it off and be like, oh, it's my body regulating again after the miscarriage. But then I was like a week and a half late, so I thought I'm just gonna test just to like clear my mind and get that possibility out. And that kind of leads into my next question about what symptoms I had that made me think it was a girl. With Milan, I was really, really, really sick. Didn't eat for the first trimester. And I was sick pretty much my whole pregnancy with her. So I had heard you're more sick with a girl, so I thought she was a girl. And then Phoebe's pregnancy, I was sick, but like very, very mild. I could still eat a lot of stuff. I never actually puked with Phoebe. I just felt nauseous. So I was convinced Phoebe was a boy. I had different cravings. I wasn't as sick. So I was so convinced Phoebe was a boy that I sold like a bunch of my girl stuff. And then to my surprise, she was a girl. And my pregnancies were pretty different with Milan and Phoebe. With Milan, I was really, really picky and I ate really bland foods my entire pregnancy. With Phoebe, I wanted all the desserts and all the sweets. So it was weird how different they were. And then this baby, I was not as sick as I was with Milan, but sicker than I was with Phoebe. So I was like right in the middle, but my cravings were completely different. Like I wanted Mexican food and soda. And those were 2 of my really big aversions with my other pregnancies. So, like, my cravings had me convinced it was a boy, but, like, my intuition, I just thought it was a girl. But I couldn't tell if I just thought it was a girl because that's all I knew was having girls. So, like, that's just what I assumed it would be. But I went back and forth. Like, every day I changed my mind on what I thought it was. But deep down, I thought it was a girl. Okay, I'm back. I had to take Milan to preschool. But baby names, that's asked a ton. And we actually do know what we're going to name this baby, which is crazy. I thought for sure she'd be nameless until birth. But I learned my lesson my last pregnancy when we told a bunch of people names we were considering and had names totally ruined by rude responses or funny facial expressions. So we don't tell anybody, but I don't mind telling names that we were thinking of or names that I like, but we won't be using. I just won't tell the actual baby name because I don't want it to be. One name that I brought up with Milan, or with Phoebe, that everyone shut down, and I still really like it, I just can't get everyone's reactions out of my mind, was I really liked Isley. Trying to remember the other names. I love the name Penny. We really liked Goldie, but Goldie Fox sounded like Goldilocks, so that one was out. I like Vera. I like Delilah. I like Phoebe was almost Malia, and Milan was almost Marlo. That's like all I can remember off the top of my head. We actually settled on this baby's name like really quickly into this pregnancy. So we didn't think of a ton this pregnancy, but we thought of so many with Phoebe because we really struggled to name her. For boys, we have 2 that like if we have a boy, we have 2 that like we're between. But other ones that we aren't going to use. I love the name Bennett and calling him Benny. I love the name Boston or Micah, but that's too similar to Michael. And Boston, I don't know if I could do another city name because I'm not super into trends, but since my other kids' names wouldn't be city, I think I could do it. I also really like the name Nico, Niko. I think it's really cute. Maybe having his full name be Nicholas, but just calling him Nico. I I really like all the ones. Okay, and my next question, I got asked about natural birthing, and I could talk seriously for hours on this subject, so I'll try to keep it really short as possible. So for those that don't know, here's a little backstory on why I'm passionate about birth and natural birthing. Milan was an unexpected natural birth. I found out in the middle of labor that medically I'm not allowed to get an epidural. So her labor was I was induced with her, so I had Pitocin in my system, and pretty much her entire labor, I was in a panic attack. I was hyperventilating, I couldn't breathe. I was so scared. I was really, really scared. With Phoebe's, I prepared a little bit more, and it was a completely different experience. I still had moments that I was afraid, but not nearly as bad as with Milan's, and I was there the entire time with Phoebe. With Milan's, I kind of checked out, because... So when I say I prepared, I looked into hypnobirthing. It wasn't for me. I couldn't fully get on board, and I didn't want to follow a method that I didn't 100% believe in. What was the most helpful for me was reading and listening and talking to and hearing other people's natural birth experiences. Something about the fact that so many other people did this and so many other people had different experiences, but in the end it gave me confidence that I could do it as well. Like, if all these other people have done it and look what challenges they had, and like, this is how they handled it in their labor, and like, I can do this. And so that was the most helpful for me. I took a little bit of information from each birth story I read, a little bit of like, oh, I would apply that into my labor. Yeah, I could see that being helpful. Or even in labor, I remember thinking like, oh, so-and-so did this, so I'm going to try that. Anyways, I always struggle to talk about this because I never want it to feel like I'm bashing epidurals, because I'm totally for them and they are so great for so many people. Just, that's not even an option for me. So, but my main pieces of advice would be to really, really, really trust and be open with your doctor. And if he says one thing or like anything that like doesn't sit right, it's okay to change doctors. I think I owe a lot of my positive birth experience with Phoebe is thanks to my doctor, and we were really open with the fact that I'm going natural, and what measures I can take, what I'm allowed to do at the hospital to make that as enjoyable as possible. With this next baby, we are planning a home birth, which I'm always skeptical to talk about on here, not because I'm ashamed, just because I want every ounce of energy surrounding my birth to be 100% positive. I don't want there to be any opposition, any questioning, any negativity. I want it to all be 100% positive. And so I've only talked to people that I know. It gave me confidence that I could do it as well. Like, if all these other people have done it and look what challenges they had, and like, this is how they handled it in their labor, and like, I can do this. And so that was the most helpful for me. I took a little bit of information from each birth story I read, a little bit of like, oh, I would apply that into my labor. Yeah, I could see that being helpful. Or even in labor, I remember thinking like, oh, so-and-so did this, so I'm going to try that. Anyways, I always struggle to talk about this because I never want it to feel like I'm bashing epidurals, because I'm totally for them and they are so great for so many people. Just, that's not even an option for me. So, but my main pieces of advice would be to really, really, really trust and be open with your doctor. And if he says one thing or like anything that like doesn't sit right, it's okay to change doctors. I think I owe a lot of my positive birth experience with Phoebe is thanks to my doctor, and we were really open with the fact that I'm going natural, and what measures I can take, what I'm allowed to do at the hospital to make that as enjoyable as possible. With this next baby, we are planning a home birth, which I'm always skeptical to talk about on here, not because I'm ashamed, just because I want every ounce of energy surrounding my birth to be 100% positive. I don't want there to be any opposition, any questioning, any negativity. I want it to all be 100% positive. And So I've only talked to people that I know. We have hired a doula. My mom's flying out. My midwife is so amazing. I love her so much. And I am so excited to give birth at home. And there's just so many aspects of it that will just be so special. Anyways, my last tidbit on natural births is actually, if for any birth, if you're pregnant at all, you should listen to the Birth Hour podcast. It is amazing. There's hundreds of stories from so many. There's women on there talking about their cesareans, planned or emergency. There's people talking about their VBACs. There's people talking about home births. There's people talking about natural hospital births. There's every single type of birth on there, and that was the most helpful for me when I was pregnant. Every episode I listen to, I take away something like, yeah, I'm going to apply this into my birth experience, or yes, I wish I would have known that with my past birth experiences, or anything. So any pregnant mama, I really, 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 really recommend. Okay, next question is how I introduce my babies to solid food. I do baby-led weaning, and I love it. I'm super passionate about it. I'm a huge believer in it. I will link a couple Instagram pages right here that are really helpful, but Pinterest. Okay, actually they're Facebook groups. So if you search Feeding the Littles on Facebook, that group is awesome, and it's a really good resource to ask questions. Pinterest, like I said, has a ton of food ideas, when to start, but basically what baby-led weaning is I don't feed my girls, and I don't feed them purees. We start with table food right away, and they feed themselves. I put it on their tray, and they learn how to feed themselves. So basically that's. It's funny, my must-haves were different with each girl because everything just really depends on the baby. With Milan, my Mamaru was like my saving grace. She loved that thing. It's the only place she slept, but Phoebe hated it. Phoebe hated a rock and play. She preferred to sleep flat in her crib, which is so weird to me. I will say, like, swaddle blankets. I like flannel swaddle blankets. I think they hold the best. Flannel swaddle blankets are really hard to find, so I actually just made mine. It's like a 40 by 40 sheet of flannel fabric, just with serged edges. Super easy. I am not a sewer at all, but I can do those. Milan never took a binky, but with Phoebe, binky clips have saved my life. I really like the cotton ones because you can wash them and they look brand new. I've had the same one since she was born. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, my Ergo. I love that thing. I don't know how parents go without one. It is the best. I have the 360. It's so convenient. Other ones are a white noise machine, a pumping bra strap thing. I never had that with Milan, and I got it with Phoebe, and I was like, what the heck have I been doing? So much easier to pump with the pumping strap. This is the one I have, and you can just put it over the top of the bra that you're wearing, which I liked that I didn't have to change bras because I don't pump that often. $32, so worth it. And from like 0 to 4 months, I loved the Happy Wrap. I think Phoebe lived in that thing at least a few hours every day. Especially with multiple kids, baby wearing just saved my life. I never really needed to with Milan, but with multiple. Someone also asked about safe baby wearing when pregnant. I baby wear on my front just until it makes me uncomfortable. I have liked using the ring slings because Phoebe kind of sits more off to the side versus on my belly. But as soon as it makes me sick, I just move them to my back. So I wore Milan on my back in my Ergo my entire pregnancy. And I remember when I was trying to induce labor with Phoebe, I like strapped Milan on and like went on a 5-mile hike. Kind of going off the pumping bra, tips on breastfeeding. It's also something I'm pretty passionate about, which is strange because there was a time of Phoebe's life that I thought that she would be formula fed. So backstory with Milan, she nursed really well right away. She did lose quite a bit of weight at birth. She got down to like 5'12". So they told me to supplement with formula, and we did it with a syringe because I was so terrified of nipple confusion, and I just really, really wanted to be successful. And looking back, I wish I would have gave her a bottle sooner because she never did take a bottle. And that was a real cause of my postpartum depression and anxiety. So her breastfeeding experience was fine. She cluster fed all the time, like all the time. She didn't take a binky or a bottle, and she just wanted to nurse. She really found all of her comfort from nursing. So when she hit like 4 months old is when my postpartum like depression / loneliness was at its peak. Like I just felt like I just nursed 24/7. I couldn't get away. I couldn't get a break. And then I got pregnant with Phoebe when Milan was 8 months old, and it hurt so bad to nurse. My nipples were so sensitive. It felt like I was nursing a newborn again. So I nursed her until she was just before 12 months and weaned her. And at this point, she was still nursing like every hour. She still nursed to sleep. So weaning her was kind of harder. We really relied on distractions. We went outside a ton. I gave her lots of. We also tried to wean straight to a sippy cup because after a year, you're not supposed to use a bottle. And that did not go well. She like went days without drinking anything. So my doctor told me to try a bottle, and she took it, and that ended. So during the weaning process, what helped most was distractions and like her favorite snacks, and having Michael take over bedtime. I had to leave. I would walk around the house. I would be doing something, so he had to do it. And then with Phoebe's breastfeeding, I really didn't stress as much because everything had gone really smoothly with Milan, and it was like 5 months later. But I really knew I wanted to introduce a bottle and a pacifier to her So I gave Phoebe a pacifier in the hospital. Best decision I ever did. She liked it in the hospital and then started to hate it again, and hated it until she was about 8 weeks old. But every single day I tried. Like, I kept it clipped to her, and I would offer it to her all the time to just let her practice. And she was so dramatic. She gagged. We tried a bunch of different binkies, but then ended up just picking one and sticking to that so it didn't confuse her, and just tried and tried and tried and tried. And then one day she just took it. And when she was born, she nursed really great, and she nursed really great in the hospital. And then as soon as we got home, she wanted nothing to do with nursing. She was the calmest, sweetest baby, and only cried whenever I went to go nurse her. She would get so frustrated and angry and bite me because she was so angry that I was trying to get her to nurse. And I didn't understand because like Milan loved nursing. Like that was what she lived for. And here this baby was. We tried skin to skin. We tried the nipple shield. We tried getting her naked. We tried everything. We tried different positions. I saw 3 different lactation consultants. I took her to see if she had a lung or lip tie. I tried everything. And at this point, not only was she losing weight, she was stopping, she stopped having wet diapers. And obviously that's a huge concern for dehydration. And I didn't know it. I felt so defeated at this point. I felt like I had tried everything. And she just did not want to nurse. Anytime I bring her to my boob, she would just freak out, get super frustrated. I knew I had milk. I was pumping a ton. I had a lot of milk. So that wasn't the issue. I couldn't. So my last resort that I decided to try before I was like, that's okay. Formula fed babies are happy. I'll be happier. She'll be happier. Like it's not worth forcing it if she doesn't want it, but I wanted to try one last thing. So I started feeding her bottles. She was on a bottle exclusive, like I was pumping and just giving her bottles for a few days. And I ordered, they call it a supplemental nursing system. So while I was waiting for that to come in, I was strictly bottle feeding her. So basically what it is you put your pumped milk in something right here and like run it around your neck, and a small tube comes down and you tape it to your nipple, and the baby's sucking on the tube activates the milk to go out of the tube. So we used one of those for a few weeks, and I think what it was she was so lazy and tired and chill that she didn't want to work for the milk, and she was getting frustrated that the milk just wasn't right there given to her. So the Tube really helped until she got a little bit stronger and a little bit bigger and realized that when she does come to the nipple, that's where milk comes. So really that supplemental nursing system saved our nursing relationship, and we nursed exclusively until she was 14 months old. And I just always think, like, what if I had given up right before that? Like, it would be... Before I had Milan, I heard a quote once that was like, by 3 weeks of breastfeeding, you want to cry every feeding and give up. By 6 weeks, you're starting to get the hang of it. And by 6 months, like, you'll feel bad for moms that have to prepare a bottle. But with all that said, like I mentioned, I thought that she was going to be formula fed for a while, and that was totally okay. And I was fine with that. And if that makes me happier and if that makes babies happier, like, 100% go for it. Next subject is sleep. I get so many questions about the girls' sleep and how I got them to sleep, and I feel like I got really lucky with 2 really good sleepers. Milano was a little bit harder than Phoebe. Something I am really passionate and I believe in is routines. I don't do schedules. I don't watch the clock, but I do follow the same routine. So before naps and before bedtime, we do the same thing So I start out nursing my babies to sleep, nursing / rocking / just cuddling to sleep, basically giving them whatever they're asking for to fall asleep, whatever helps them. I give them nursing, rocking, bounce. I think the first few months are such a survival time that I don't try to enforce a ton of things. I do start the routines from day one to kind of start the pattern, but I don't expect too much basically out of the first few. I co-slept with Milan until she was about 4 to 5 weeks old, and then I could tell that she was getting more restless in our bed and she was waking up to us. We tried to have her sleep on the side, but they end up on her chest. So we moved Milan to her own bedroom she was like 4 to 5 weeks old. And she wasn't sleeping through the night at that time, but we were waking her up, and she was waking us up even when she actually wasn't awake because she was so noisy. Moving her to her own room helped her dramatically. It helped her so much. We could keep her room warmer, we could use the humidifier, and we could turn the white noise up really loud, and that really helped her sleep so much better. She woke up, she started sleeping through the night and then went through the 4-month sleep regression, and the 4-month sleep regression was rough with her. Like, it took me hours to get her to bed, and then she'd sleep for 30 minutes and then be awake, and it would take me... And basically, I would just try to bounce and nurse and try whatever because I was so desperate for sleep. And then she was in the 4-month sleep regression for about a month, and then gradually started sleeping back and waking up 1 time a night, which I was fine with. And when she woke up, I would nurse her back to sleep. And then me and Michael had our honeymoon planned when she was 8 months old, and she was still nursing to sleep, and she still didn't take a bottle. So I was just super open with my mom, who was going to watch her. I'm like, you're probably going to have to feed her through a syringe the entire time because she's so stubborn and she won't take a bottle. And when she wakes up at night, you'll probably just have to rock her and, like, try whatever. I don't know what. And my mom wasn't worried at all. She had 6 kids. She's like, I got this. Go and have fun. So the first night we were in Belize, I asked my mom, like, how she did. And she was like, she did great. She woke up once and was up for, like, 10 minutes and just kind of went back to bed. Once she realized it was my mom there to get her and, like, I wasn't there, she was like, okay, like, I guess I'll just go back to bed. And then she slept through the night that whole week that I was gone, and even when I came home, she slept through the night. So not only did I get to go on a honeymoon, but I came home to a baby that didn't need to nurse to sleep anymore and slept through the night without me having to do anything. That was, like, the best thing I did. I said from then on out, I'm like, geez, when I need to wean my kids, And then her next sleep trial was a week after Phoebe was born. She learned how to climb out of the crib. And we moved her mattress to the floor. We tried to put her in sleepers because she was using her feet to grip, and there was nothing stopping that girl. So at 18 months, she got moved to a toddler bed, and that transition was a little rough until we figured out what method worked best for her. And we ended up following, I think it's called the Nanny 911 method. But basically what we did is we would follow our same routine and put her in bed, and leave the room and I'd stay by the door, and the second she started to climb out of her bed, I could see like through the cracks. The second her legs got over, I would open the door and go back in and just say one thing. I'd say it's time to go to bed, and I'd tuck her back in and go out. Like, I would never talk to her. I wouldn't say like, oh sweetie, it's time to go to bed. Like, I would just say it's time to go to bed, or you need to stay in your bed. And the first few days I went back in her room immediately, like back to back to back to back, probably like 15, 20 times, just putting her right back in, right back in, right back in. And we did that, and by the third day, she did not get out. And then from then on out, she never gets out of her bed unless she tells us she needs to go to the bathroom or something, which is really nice when we're on vacation because I can put her in whatever bed and she knows she's supposed to stay there. Every now and then, probably like once every other week, she'll come into our bed early in the morning. Like if she wakes up early at like 5, she'll come in and cuddle with us and fall back asleep in the morning. And I actually really love that, so I don't fight that too much and I don't consider it a bad. So when we switched Phoebe to her toddler bed, we tried that same method from the get-go, and it didn't work for her. So that just shows that every kid is so different, and every method, each kid is going to absorb differently. Her method, we basically just let her wander the room until she was ready to get to bed, and then she would climb up in her bed. And we had tried that method with Milan, and she would just sit by the door and scream for hours and hours and hours and hours. She never once got back in bed. And sleep training with Phoebe went a little bit differently than with Milan, because Milan, it just kind of happened when I was gone. And Phoebe just kind of happened too. Like, I feel so bad saying that. The first time she slept completely straight through the night, from like when I put her to bed until like 7 o'clock in the morning, was like 4 weeks old. And she has done that pretty much since she was 4 weeks old. Her 4-month sleep regression didn't affect her overnight sleeping. It just affected her naps. She thought that she didn't need naps anymore, which is funny because that's exactly how her 18-month sleep regression went. She was just like, I'm good without naps for a little bit. But other than that, we followed the same routine since we brought her home. We use humidifiers and white noise machines to create a good sleeping environment. She has slept in her crib pretty much since day one. I don't have a ton of advice. Because I didn't have to do much with her. I didn't have to go through a ton of opposition where I learned something out of it, if that makes sense. I can't really take a ton of credit for her sleeping. As far as when we stopped nursing her to sleep, I nursed/rocked her to sleep until about 5 months old, 5 to 6 months maybe. And that's when she started to show signs of that's not what she would just act really uncomfortable in my arms, get really squirmy, and take forever to fall asleep, and constantly be readjusting herself, which is, so that's kind of when we started putting her down in her crib and that is where the Binky is a huge lifesaver. She was able to use the Binky to self-soothe without crying. So that was how we transitioned from nursing to sleep to putting her in her crib asleep, was the Binky. I'm realizing how long this story is getting, and I'm like not even halfway through the questions, so I'm gonna try to answer as much, but I feel like this is gonna end up being like 2 hour long. A question is, how many kids do we want? Our plan before we started having kids was 4, and we wanted 2 really close, and then we wanted to wait 3 to 4 years and then have 2 more really close. Obviously that didn't happen as I'm pregnant again. We just wanted a baby again. So now that we don't have that gap between our second and third like we thought we would, the thought of being done, like having our last baby in like 2 to 3 years, is kind of sad. So we've like briefly talked about maybe having 5. I don't know. We'll see after our 4th how we feel. Or I don't know. 4 or 5 is kind of what we're leaning towards right now. Someone asked about my skincare, and I posted a huge story about it a long time ago, and about my face struggles and my acne struggles after weaning and stuff, and I found a Miracle product. I'll tag her right here where I get it. So this is the wash that I use. This is an exfoliator I use like once a week, And I use this morning and night. You can screenshot that if that's helpful. And I'll tag the girl that I get these two from. And then I probably get asked how to curl my hair like a few times a week. And funny story about that is I've tried to film like 2 to 3 different tutorials, and I don't know how these vloggers do it. I don't know. Short of having Michael film the entire thing, which would be super awkward, and I don't think I could actually be serious the whole time, I just can't figure out how to get my camera in focus the whole time. But basically I use a straightener, and I just like put it like this and turn. I don't know. I'm working on a tutorial. Maybe I'll have it soon. I don't know. It's really hard to explain, but I use and my favorite shampoo for blondes is the Joico. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Purple shampoo. It really keeps it toned in between washes. I've had blonde hair my whole life, and I've just discovered the magic of purple shampoo. Ever since I cut my pixie, I really try to keep my hair healthy, because a huge reason I did cut my pixies because my hair was so dead. So I only wash it like twice a week at most. And then I rarely use a blow dryer, like maybe once every 6 months. I really try to let it air dry. I will shower at night or shower like a few hours before I need to go anywhere so that I can let it air dry. And most of the time I curl my hair, because then I can style it one day and the curls last me like 3 or 4 days. Maybe I'll touch up around my face, but for the most part I don't have to do anything on it, so it's nice that I'm only using heat like every 3 or 4 days.